Good morning. Pleased to be joined with Vice Chair Ted Lieu. And I wanted to start out by thanking the extraordinary group of local, state, and federal first responders back in my home county, in San Bernardino County. The line fire broke out late last week there, and the brave men and women who are first responders are working around the clock to keep property and people safe, and I appreciate their work. I spent some time out with them at the Incident Command Center, at the Emergency Operations Center, as well as the local shelter, evacuation shelter that has been stood up, and I'm thinking about them as we're doing our work here. Congress is back in session, and once again, House Republicans are leading us toward a government shutdown. The so-called reasonable Republicans are nowhere to be seen as Speaker Johnson tries to jam Trump's Project 2025 agenda into government funding legislation. Extreme Republicans know that this bill has no chance of becoming law, and yet they want to force a vote that jeopardizes military readiness and veterans' health care. We've seen how this ends. The only way to pass a government funding bill is to pass it on a bipartisan basis. Even their own members admit it. The American people are sick and tired of the chaos, the dysfunction, and the extremism that they see from House Republicans and their failure to govern in a responsible way. House Democrats are ready to extend the hand of bipartisanship whenever possible, and we will push back against the continued efforts of MAGA extremism whenever necessary. Vice Chair Ted Lieu.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar. We are back from August recess, and it feels like Groundhog's Day all over again. As Chairman Aguilar has said, we are now facing yet another government shutdown. So let's just review what's been happening ever since Republicans took control of the House last year. The House has had difficulty trying to keep the lights on. We started last year facing down a threat to default on our nation's debts, which would have been catastrophic. We then had to face multiple government shutdown attempts by the Republicans who were in control. They also took out their own speaker, and now we are yet facing another threat to shut down our government. And this particular CR I find deeply offensive. I'm a veteran. There was a $12 billion shortfall in this Republican CR for veterans' health care. And I don't see how this CR passes. It's not a serious attempt to avert a government shutdown, and that's why you have a number of Republicans who have already publicly come out saying they are not going to vote for this CR. So I urge the Republican leadership to get serious, to put a serious CR on the table, and then we can do what the American people need us to do, which is to get rid of the chaos and dysfunction and make government run. I yield back.
Questions? Max.
One of the notable aspects of the CR is the attachment of the SAVE Act to it. Of course, 5 Democrats did vote for the SAVE Act earlier this year. Have you spoken with those 5 Democrats and give a sense of what they might do when the CR comes up for a vote?
Well, first, today we have a rule vote. Let's see how the rule vote goes, and if we'll have this vote. Catherine Clark is an amazing whip, and I'm sure she'll have some thoughts on where members are. We're in the process of having a lot of conversations with members on their thoughts, but all of us agree. We know how this ends. This ends in a bipartisan bill that has Democrats and Republicans on a CR. It doesn't appear that Republicans want to do that right now, and that House Republicans want to do that. They're isolated, though. They're on an island. Doesn't feel like they have much support in the Senate for their position. But we're going to keep talking to our members, and our members want to avert a government shutdown. We voted to avert a government shutdown before. We will do so again. House Republicans are the only ones that flirt with catastrophe on this side of the dome, and we expect that to continue. But it's become, as the Vice Chair said, it's become par for the course with Speaker Johnson, who wants to insert elements of Donald Trump's Project 2025 into this government funding bill. That's what this is about, but we shouldn't be surprised. I mean, this is the chief legal architect of the failed attempt to overturn a free and fair election in Speaker Johnson. And this is a continuation of those efforts. That's what he's proven is important to him, is to do what Donald Trump asks, and that's what he's doing this week. Thank you. Chad. Good morning.
Just to dovetail off that question, when you have Democrats from these swing districts who voted for the SAFE Act in July, the Don Davises, the Marie Camp residents, obviously Republicans are trying to put them in a box and say, you voted here, but you didn't vote there. What does a Democrat do when they have voted for that and say, this is different? How do they explain that to the voters?
Well, look, I mean, standalone pieces of legislation are different than poison pill bills into government funding spending. I mean, look, if I'm those members, I've been a frontline member, there are significant cuts, as the Vice Chair mentioned, significant cuts to veterans' healthcare legislation, significant cuts that I'm paying attention to in the disaster relief fund. That could be the account that helps fund some of the recovery and efforts for what I'm seeing in the wildfires in California. These are significant cuts that members should be aware of. Members are going to make their own decisions on where they land on these bills, but I can tell you, judging by the totality of what is in front of them, this is not a serious piece of legislation, and this is not a good piece of legislation.
Do voters understand the distinction? I mean, we understand why this is different here, but do you think that they understand that and that they can communicate?
Sure. I mean, in this hyper-partisan moment, I understand the desire to want to talk about how this plays back home, from a communications perspective. Our members are focused on how do we avert a catastrophe? How do we avoid government shutdown? That's what members are concerned about. Primarily, if you want to get into the politics of this, a lot of the attack ads have already been written, so our members are concerned about how we avoid government funding lapsing. That's the important work that we need to do this month. That's what they are concerned about, and then we're going to let the politics go where they go in October. But right now, this is the job in front of us. Nick.
Are you going to be watching tonight's presidential debate? And if so, what are you watching?
I think all of us are going to be tuning in some way, catching the highlights or catching it in real time. I will say, watching it on the East Coast is easier for us as West Coast folks. Sometimes 6 o'clock is a little too early. We're moving around, but yeah, I'll be watching it. I think I'll be watching it with the Vice Chair. What the American public is going to see is a stark contrast in two candidates. One who's a seasoned prosecutor who's going to make her case, and one who is a felon. One who is going to talk about women's reproductive freedom and their access to abortion care as health care, and the other who is going to take credit for overturning Roe v. Wade. One who is going to advocate for increased tax cuts to millionaires and billionaires, and the other who is going to talk about a tax cut for 100 million families across this country to bring housing more in reach for so many. That's what they're going to see, and I think that contrast is going to be on display, and we look forward to watching. But look, I mean, make no mistake, Donald Trump has been on a debate stage is the most of anybody in modern times. He's going to do what he's going to do, and he's going to speak to his base. But we know that she's going to be ready, and the Vice President is going to be ready and polished. I know that the Vice Chair has known her a number of years as well, but we're excited for what we're going to see tonight.
Kamala Harris has put in writing her plans for the future, such as reducing housing costs, going after corporate price gougers, reduce food prices, and protecting reproductive freedom. Donald Trump talks about Hannibal Lecter. So that's a choice we have in November. And it's not just the two presidential candidates. What we see with this CR is the Republicans try to jam through parts of the Project 2025 insane ideas into actual governmental policy. And so that's why, again, we urge that Republican leadership put a serious CR on the floor, not something that is just for messaging, and certainly not something that implements Trump's radical 2025 agenda.
Questions? Mike?
On a separate topic, before the break, the Senate passed two bipartisan pieces of child safety legislation.
Yeah, I am radical. We need to get radical about what we are doing and take it seriously.
As President of the United
Safety Act and the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. Chuck Schumer on Sunday in a Dear Tommy called on the House to pass the bill so he didn't begin on the floor yesterday. I know you all don't control the floor right now, but do Democrats support those two pieces of legislation that passed with big bipartisan majorities in the Senate, have huge popularity in public domain? Do you all support those pieces of legislation, and do you think that House Republican leadership should put them on the floor?
We support bipartisan bills that keep our community safe. And those particular bills are going through Energy and Commerce, and that's where they would make their way to the floor. But important reauthorizations, as well. Those are things that we feel are going to protect our communities and worthy of discussion in this era where social media is such an important part of our lives and our kids' lives. We need to do everything we can. Now, members may take issues with specific pieces of this legislation, but on balance, we need to look at what is in the legislation and what it will do to help our communities and help young people navigate the world that is in front of them, the most connected generation in our lifetime. And so we always look forward to that policy debate. And unfortunately, Speaker Johnson has put a series of bills that aren't going to become law on the House floor, and we're wasting precious time. But as we've talked about, that's part of the chaos that has been the hallmark of his tenure and of House Republicans the past session.
One of the things we're hearing about the CR is that there's some who are arguing that it should be going until February or March because they feel like whoever wins the election should be determining how the government is funded until September. Do you agree with that notion, or do you think a CR needs to be within this year, this calendar year?
Well, you should be specific, because the only people arguing that point are House Republicans, and specifically House leadership. You're not hearing I haven't heard a lot of House appropriators on the Republican side lean into this. I think Chairman Cole has been very measured in his comments, but I'm not hearing a lot of folks who actually have experience appropriating say that March is where they want to be. In fact, Susan Collins has pushed back against this. So this is House Republican leadership carrying this forward. I think it is important for the House to do its work as soon as possible by putting out a 6-month date. We're not meeting the needs of the American public, and we're giving up before even trying. And so I think what is important is to have a shorter CR to get our work done, and to have something done before the end of the year for the new Congress to begin. I think that's the most important thing. Thank you so much.